Hope you all are safe and doing well. In today's pandemic situation, where everyone is struggling in many ways, construction industry is one of them. Therefore, Medi-Caps University presents a webinar on overview of construction project management and construction during COVID-19. But before we move on, let me introduce to you Medi-Caps University. In year 2000, we have started with Medi-Caps Institute of Technology and Management with 240 seats in various engineering and management courses. In year 2009, we have come up with Medi-Caps Institute of Science and Technology, where we have started few new courses in engineering and we became Medi-Caps Group of Institution. And finally, in year 2015, we got the approval from UGC to be a self-financed university and admission for same started in 2016. Since then, we have included many courses other than engineering like management, agriculture, pharmacy, design, commerce, science, arts, etc. Today, we have strong backing of all the parents and students since we have created our own band in central India. Till date, more than 12,000 students have been passed out from Medi-Caps and are working globally. And more than 7,000 students currently studying in various programs. Since the university started, we are lucky to have Professor Sunil K. Somani as the founding Vice Chancellor of the university. Now, let me give you the introduction of today's speaker. Mr. Jasmeet Singh completed his Bachelor of Engineering in Civil from UIT RGPV Bhopal. MTech Honors in Environmental Engineering from SGS ITS Indore. He was working as an assistant professor in the Civil Engineering Department at SDBC Indore. He moved to the United States in 2016 to join the construction management program at Iowa State University. He graduated in 2018 and has been working in the construction industry in the US. He is currently working with Jacobs as a quality manager on the new US Federal Courthouse project in Des Moines, Iowa. He has an extensive experience working on several commercial constructions as a general contractor and CMA on projects ranging from $7 million to $137 million. I would like to invite our speaker for today's webinar. Over to you, Jasmeet sir.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Alok and the Civil Engineering Department at Medi-Caps for this opportunity and providing the platform to connect with several students. As Mr. Alok informed you, our topic for today's discussion is going to be overview of project management and impact of COVID-19 on construction industry. The agenda of this webinar will be to have an overview of the construction management from the perspective of American industry, to discuss the unforeseen situation our industry is facing due to this pandemic, and lastly, to interact with students and answer their queries. We are going to have a little unique and interesting session throughout this presentation. I would like to request everyone, all the participants, to have this link opened on their devices. If you are watching this webinar on your laptop or tablet, then you can open this website on your phone. Or if you are viewing this on your phones, then you can leave this open in the background and I'll prompt you whenever we are going to have the questionnaire and you can switch back to the app and respond. I'll give you all a minute to type in this URL. Okay, so moving forward, let's start with what key components drive project management. So a couple of things I would like to go over before we dive into this topic is that whenever I say construction for the purpose of this webinar, I mean commercial construction and not essentially residential. So it's implied that we are talking about commercial construction always. Secondly, the thoughts and the experience I'm going to share with you guys is from what I have seen and is what a norm in American industry. It might be a little different, and things might be a little different in practice over in India, or I believe there are several people from other country too. So pardon me for that if I'm not able to address those differences. And secondly, due to the time constraint, and I believe we have our undergrad civil engineering students here, so this discussion will be a little macro level, if you will, instead of diving into all the nitty-gritties and all the details of everything. And as I said earlier, we can always have your questions answered in the end of this discussion. So first off, I would like to start with the key components. Uh, the three major components in project management in construction are scope, planning, and cost management. When we talk about scope, it's essentially from the day one when you start bidding for a project or you start uh, making your project into practical aspects. The scope is what the owner has vision about. He might be willing to build a hospital. He might be willing to build a data center. He might be willing to build a commercial building, a mall, whatever it is. It's the task of the design team and the project management team to execute that dream and bring it into reality. But the scope is not an individual or independent entity. It is again correlated and interconnected with planning and cost management. So cost management is essentially each project or each vision has a budget attached to it. There's a limited amount which can be allocated to a certain project, and it is the task of the design and project management team to execute it within that budget, if not less. The third component is planning. Uh, when you when you take all these factors into account, you see what manpower you have, what technology do you have, what's the location of the project, all the several key components of the project. You start to plan about it, and by planning, it's everything. It's the schedule, the time, the cost, uh, what is the sequence of the tasks are gonna be, what are the driving critical paths for that particular project is going to be. So all these three things act in coordination with each other and drive each other, if you will. Next, I'm going to discuss the trilemma of project management. The word itself is derived from dilemma, and as you can see, uh, the project can either be good, it can be built fast, and cost-wise, it could be cheap. You cannot have all three together, and that's where the decision of a project manager or a project management team comes into picture. For example, right now a lot of countries are facing a shortages for hospital beds. So the priority is to have as many or build as many hospitals as possible in the fastest possible manner. So obviously you're not going to worry about the cost. You're going to worry about the time and the quality. So your decision will lie somewhere in this sector. Secondly, your project may be built fast and cheap, but its quality will be significantly compromised. And vice versa. It might be good and cheap, but not fast. It'll take a lot of time. Now, let's go back to our questionnaire, the website link you guys had open. Uh, if you have that open, you'll be able to see a question appear right now. And I'm going to switch my screen to the browser. So if you go to this link right here, you'll be able to view this question and will be able to respond to these answers. The options, the question is basically, what would you prioritize if you are going to build your own house? Quality and cheap, the cost aspect, good, fast, cheap, good, or fast and cheap. Okay, so the poll is full and no longer receiving any responses. I was not expecting this, but all right. So it looks like everyone wants to have, most people want to have good quality and less cost. They are not worried about the time. So that's a factor when you're building your own house, but it might not be applicable when you are building, for example, a manufacturing plant where you need the quality to be good. And again, you will want it to be cheap, but it might not be necessarily cheap. So this was a fairly quick response. I was expecting to give everyone a minute, but looks like we are done with this. So moving forward, there are certain terminologies I would like to discuss with you. These terms you come across daily while you're working as a project manager in a construction field. Um, the first would be CSI divisions. So here in US, we have certain divisions or specific numbers assigned to each and every scope of work. Right now, I'm sharing this web page with you, which shows an example of what those categories are. So Division 3 is usually concrete, Division 5 metals, Division 9 finishes, and so on and so forth. And this is kind of an industry standard for us. These divisions are fixed. And if we go into each particular division, we'll find that each specific scope of work has been assigned a specific 6-digit number. The purpose of having a CSI code in place, and we'll talk about this in the later slides about the specifications and the drawings and submittals. These provide a uniformity between different kind of trades. This provides this reduces the chances of error when you are communicating with different teams. You are able to specifically talk about or uh, get your message across to different teams that what specific division or what specific scope of work you are talking about. So again, these are the macro level divisions within the CSI code. Moving back to our presentation. The next terminologies I would like to discuss are about design development and construction documents. So we refer to them as DD and CD. So I'm not sure if you have discussed this within your coursework or not. So I'll provide a little bit of context and a background to this. So when we say that a project has been realized or a project has been proposed, we have a certain set of goals in mind, but we need to provide some tangible numbers to it. Numbers in terms of the time it will take to complete and the cost it will take to complete. To achieve these tangible numbers, to achieve these uh, numbers, we need at least a certain set of preliminary designs. And these design development or DD documents solve that purpose. So the design development phase is when the designer, the owner, and the contractor are working together, and try to bring uh, they try to bring the vision of the owner or the aim of the owner on paper in terms of broad strokes of design and drawings. They'll survey about what the land area is available to them, what the carpet area is available to them, what kind of codes are applicable to that building. You may not be able to go uh, above a certain height. You need a setback from the road about a certain distance, and so on and so forth. Depending on those, they'll have a very, very preliminary set of drawings, which the contractor can then use with his subcontractors and his estimator and try to get a ballpark number or an approximate number for these plans. And then he can communicate to the owner that these are the numbers we are looking at. It might take 3 months, and let's, for the sake of argument, say $3 million. He'll convey this to the owner, and then it's owner's decision whether this project is viable or not. Now, certain times, most of the times, the owner has certain perspective. He has been talking to the architects and designers. He knows that, okay, this is going to happen. But at several times, you may find that the funds available in the next 6 months are not going to be viable for this scope of work. So several times it happens that you may divide the project into two phases, or how we call it, in other words, future expansion. So these design development documents help us go through that. Once you are through the DD phase, you go into the CD phase. So the CD phase documents and the DD phase documents have certain steps in it. Usually here, what I've seen are 25% design drawing documents, 75%, 50%, and finally 100%. And the same is the case with the construction documents. You may start with 25%, 50%, 75%, and then have 100%. Now, this depends on the project. For example, I'll give you two examples. We were working on a renovation project of McDonald's restaurant, and so here in US, the McDonald's was going through a rebranding phase, where the corporate had decided that the all the restaurants are going to look in a certain way, a uniformity in all the restaurants, and our task was to complete that project while the restaurant was operational. So we had the foot traffic in the restaurant, and we were doing our construction work. Essentially, it involved all the exterior remodeling and a little bit of interior. In those kinds of projects, you cannot go forward with 50% or 25% series. You have, so we had only 6 weeks to complete that project. The budget was for about 1.6 million, and we had to just go in, be very fast, and be very tactical about how we are going to do the construction, so that we do not hinder or we do not stop the foot traffic coming into the restaurant and affect their sales at all. So these projects require 100% construction documents even when you have boots on the site. But there are certain projects, there are certain metro projects, or the project like I'm working on right now, the courthouse project. We are The total duration of this project has is about 3.5 years, and we are 1.5 years into the project, and we still do not have 100% construction drawings or the construction documents. So we cannot wait for the 100% CDs to be ready and then to start. It will take another 5 years. So how we are approaching this problem is that we have had 25% and 50% CDs, but these 50% or 25% CDs had complete detail for the substructure, the foundation. The contractor took these drawings and started with that part of the project, obviously, and then we started installing the pile caps, grade beams, foundation walls, and so on. Right now, we are done with our foundation walls, and yesterday the 75% CDs were released. So now they have these 75% CDs have complete information about the basement level. The level above basement are still under discussion, and there are still design decisions to be made. So these are not 100% design drawings, but we are able to continue working and make progress within the project with 75% documents. The next term is called milestones. Milestones are certain steps within the project which you decide with the owner. These may be certain big level milestones, as the name suggests. For example, you might have first milestone as groundbreaking, where you start the construction work. You might have the next milestone as foundation work complete, or if it's a existing building, you may have a demo phase complete. When I say demo, I mean demolition. So you may have certain milestones within a project. You usually have 5 or 6 milestones, but then with the size of project, these might increase. So these milestones have relation with the cost, the budgeting information, which the owner needs to know, the schedule information that, okay, we are 25% done with our project, and we still have 80% of our time left per our original schedule. So milestones are decided to capture those details. Next I'll talk about is the spec book. This is essentially the specifications that we have. So you are all aware, and I'm sure you have had the course of building design and drawing and something like that, where you draw plans and go through different, you are trained on different types of drawings which you need to create. But then there's a book called Spec Book, which is kind of a Bible for construction people. A spec book details each and every small information regarding the project. If there are going to be doors installed, obviously there are going to be doors installed. The spec book will have all the small details, what its size is going to be, what its material is going to be, what kind of locks are going to be installed on it, what vendor you need to buy that door from. These low level details lie within the spec book. Where this is used by the project management team to know what long-term procurement items are there. So when I say procurement, it means getting a product approved and having it ordered from the manufacturer and getting it delivered on site. If you are getting, let's say, for example, a simple thing, let's say you're procuring signage. There are different signs on the building, for example, which say where the toilets are, where the staircase is, where the fire exit is, and so on and so forth. These signs can be readily available within a week or two, but there are things like doors which take about 8 to 10 weeks to get manufactured on a typical project. You have HVAC equipment which usually take about 18 to 20 weeks to get delivered. And when I say delivered, it's from the time it gets, after it's approved to it reaches your site. And now when we talk about submittals, we'll talk about how it gets approved and how much time is required for that process. So basically, spec book is your Bible, which you refer to when you are going to perform any kind of work. The spec book enlists everything based on the CSI codes, and that's the reason I talked about it. You have it, you have it laid out in different divisions. You have it laid out in different CSI codes. You can refer those if you're going to pour concrete, what the requirements are, how much fly ash it needs, how much slag it needs, or what is the water cement ratio, minimum water cement ratio you need to maintain, and so on and so forth. So the next thing is submittal, which directly ties with the spec book. Submittals can be of two types. It can be product data or it can be shop drawings. What we call shop drawings are basically engineering drawings. These are field measurements. These can be structural studs, which you need to measure on field what the actual requirement is, because you have to go to even 1/4 of an inch and be very specific and very exact with those measurements. You cannot make an error there. There is no room for error there. So submittals have product data and shop drawings. The shop drawings I've explained. The product data is, for example, we talked about doors. Okay, so we might have 6 types of doors within a project. You need to get their product data from the subcontractor, which he gets them from his vendor. That subcontractor will submit you that product data. The project management team will filter it first. They will check it against the spec book and the plans and the schedule and see whether it matches or if there are any red flags with it, if there are any things that need to be filtered out, if there are any things that are missing. Once that check is complete, next step is the architect or the designer. If it's a structural item, first it goes to the designer. If it's anything else, it goes to the architect. The architect, we call it ball in court. So we call it the submittal has been in court of the architect or the designer or the design team, whatever it might be. And typically each person in that flow chart is given about 2 to 3 weeks to review those submittals. Since there are several people involved, the worst project I was involved on, there were 6 people in submittal approval process, and it was a pain to get them approved, get those moving forward. And usually there are only 2 to 3 people in each submittal workflow. So Once the architect reviews it, the architect may forward it to the mechanical team. For example, if you have a crack unit installed within a data center, obviously we are civil engineers. We cannot go to the nitty-gritties of mechanical, what their, for example, what their kilowatt usage is, what their resistance is, and what's the airflow going to be, and so on and so forth. There are a lot of details there. All you need to do is to coordinate that the right person is looking at the right things and is reviewing it the right way. Is all you do in these things. So once the submittal goes through this process, it gets approved. The submittal is returned back to the subcontractor. The subcontractor can go ahead and place the order, and then your procurement starts. In certain cases, the product information provided in the submittals is completely opposite or not per the spec book. In that case, you reject and ask the subcontractor to revise the submittal and resubmit. So revise and resubmit, this is a nightmare for project management people. Once it goes for revise and resubmit, obviously the subcontractor is going to take another week or two to reconcile all his data and send it to you. And then again, it's gonna take 4 to 6 weeks to get the entire submittal, go through the entire workflow and come back to you with approval. So this setbacks our schedule significantly. It may appear to be a small thing, but it impacts the schedule a lot. And when you have a big project, as complex the project is, the submittal process is as complicated. Next thing I want to talk about is ADA. This is called the American Disability Act. This requires all the public buildings in America to be compliant with people who are handicapped and use wheelchair. So all the public buildings have to have ramps so that wheelchairs can access it, have to have the entry doors or entry buttons at a certain height so that people sitting on wheelchair can reach it. Then we also have ADA apartments. I worked on a project where on each floor out of 20 apartments, we had to provide about 3 or 4 ADA compliant apartments. In those apartments, all the heights have a maximum limit. All the cabinets, overhead cabinets, all the electrical equipment in the kitchen, all the light switches have to be at a low height than it usually is so that people on wheelchair can access it. And it's a big factor in determining the schedule and design, because the set of plans you have for your normal drawings, these ADA plans are completely different, and you have to make sure that these are right. Next thing I want to talk about is design bid build. This is a fairly commonly used and a very successful method of project delivery. Design bid build is when you have the owner, the design team, the general contractor, and the subcontractor all working together in a liaison and acting on each and every detail of the project together. Usually what happens, okay, so for example, you're going to build a house, you hire a contractor. He has certain set of subcontractors which he relies on, which he has been using, and so on and so forth. In design build project, you, the contractor, and a subcontractor will sit down with a blank slate. You will discuss what your needs are, how big you want the house to be, how many bedrooms you want, and all the details you need. What's your aim going to be? And then the subcontractor pitches in and provides his experience and insight into it. Um, your your contractor will pitch in that okay, you want certain kind of material installed in your kitchen, the marble. This is very hard to procure and it'll take a long time. So okay, let's switch to this so that we don't hit a speed bump when we are through the project. So you are able to foresee and plan all the problems you're going to encounter. And again, in an ideal world, you can predict everything, but in real aspect, on practical aspect, you cannot. Moving forward, there's this term called purchase order. You might have heard the term subcontract. That's why I did not use it here. Subcontract is a legal document when you hire a subcontractor and he signs it and he's legally bounded to provide the certain scope of work which you have decided in a certain set of time within a certain set of cost. Purchase order is when there are two times when the purchase order is used. The first time is that if the subcontractor is not providing any services, he's just supplying material. For example, you're buying lumber and just the lumber for the project. You don't need his men or his equipment to be there. You simply buy the material from him. It just needs to be a purchase order. The second scenario is when you are hiring a subcontractor for anything less than $5,000. And again, this varies with a lot of projects and depends on the project team. But usually, if it's a low-cost subcontract, then you would rather go for purchase order. Next is contingency, and as the name suggests, this contingency is used to address the unforeseen things that will occur in a project. You might come across certain roadblocks, which you will see were not expected, were not on your construction drawings, on your plans at all, but you hit a roadblock, or you get into some issue with the city. And when I say city, I mean city officials, like we have Nagar Nigam in India. At that time, you may use these contingency funds and exceed your schedule by a certain amount and address those issues. The contingency is usually 5 to 10% of your total project cost. Next thing I want to discuss is CMA, construction manager as advisor or agent, and construction manager as constructor, CMC. I would move to these graphs here. So usually the CMC works like the design engineer is directly contracted under the owner, and the contractor has nothing to do with the design engineer essentially. In that case, if the contractor has any changes or he wants to address any issues, he has to go via the owner to the design engineer or the architect. In case of CMC, you are basically executing the work. You have subcontractors under you, and you are basically executing the work on site. In terms of CMA, which we are right now on this courthouse project I'm working on, we are essentially the advisor on this project. We are directly contracted under the owner. We have nothing to do with the general contractor or the subcontractors. We simply observe and review the technical aspects of the project and directly report to the owner. Next few terms I want to discuss are RFIs, request for information, ASIs, architect's supplemental instruction, change orders, GMP, and punch list. So RFIs are basically used to request information, and these are usually sent out by the subcontractor or the general contractor. This happens when, for example, you started doing your foundation work, and while excavation, you found out there's an existing sewer pipeline which you were not aware of in your plans. That time, you will document the existing scenario, how it clashes with your existing drawings, how it's not possible to go ahead with the existing set of plans, and you might or might not provide an alternative solution. It is the task of the architect and the design team to review this RFI and return an answer to you with some changes or some alternatives or some solutions. When there are multiple RFIs or there's a significant design change and the 100% construction documents are released, the architect might need to supplement his existing drawings with some additional data. He or she might need to revise certain aspects of the drawing. At that time, the ASIs are released, and ASIs play a big factor for the project management team, as you have to ensure that this reaches the subcontractors on time. You are able to identify any cost changes or schedule changes to your project and address them accordingly. And that's the time when the change order comes into picture. So let me show you this. You have your plans and specs, you have your RFIs and ASIs, which might happen in a project, and they do more often than not. And then if you find there are any cost aspects related to it, then you create a change order. A change order is what you create when you find there's going to be an additional cost to execute that work, or schedule change. You reach out to your subcontractors. You tell them this is the issue we encountered in this RFI or ASI. This is the new thing we found in our project. What's our cost aspect going to be? Then uh, you collect all that data, encapsulate it in a change order, and give it to the owner, present it to the owner, and get his approval on that. Next thing is guaranteed maximum price. This is a type of contract which is used when a CMC or the general contractor can give to the owner that we will not exceed this amount on the project budget. This is the ceiling of our expenditure that's going to be, and going above that guaranteed maximum price needs change orders again, and significant review and approval from all the teams involved. The last thing I want to discuss is punch list. Punch list is a term when your entire construction work is completed. You are ready to open it for whatever purpose it is. Maybe it's a public building, you are going to open it for the public. The architect and the owner comes in and reviews all the construction work done. And this process, this walkthrough when the owner and architect do after the completion of project is called punch list. They find out certain things that need to be corrected. If it's a good contractor, these punch list items are minor and are quick. But if it's a bad contractor, then you might face issues where you need to work on several weeks or maybe even months to address and solve those issues. Next, I'm going to talk about cost control. I'm not going to bore you with a lot of formulae and how it's calculated and what not all the terms involved. I'll just present you with these two graphs, and again on your devices you can let me activate it. You can see a question has appeared, and as it's visible from the graph that the percentage of budget is more than what was expected or planned at 40% completion of the project. I'll repeat myself again. You'll find that the actual expenditure is greater than what was expected when 40% of work was completed. My question is, why could the actual expenditure be greater than what was planned? And there are three options on your screen, and and there's no wrong answer, and there could be more than one answer. I'm going to switch to the results that we are getting. I'll give you a minute to hold on this. Okay, so again, our poll is full and no longer accepting responses. So it seems like the unplanned scope of work has got the maximum responses. And then comes second, slow work and estimation error. So again, all three of these could be correct, but usually you guys pick the right answer. The unplanned scope of work was the culprit behind it. Moving on to the second graph. Let me activate that poll. Okay, so the actual progress has been greater than what was expected in a certain time frame. So what our expectation was, after 20% completion or after reaching 20% of time, your project would be about, let's say, 7 or 8% complete. But we are finding that the actual completion is far higher in a shorter amount of time. And my quiz or question is, what could be the reason for it? And again, I'm going to switch to my browser to see the results. Okay. You guys are working quickly on this. I think you have got the right answer. Extra manpower. Um, I'll share an example with you, which I had experienced. We were working on renovation of certain apartment buildings, and it was winter time. And suddenly, our plan of the week was to demo or demolish the existing apartments. And suddenly, instead of our plan, a crew of 6 people, 12 demo guys showed up. And the reason for them, it's winter, there's less work, more people. So they were sent to our site, and we completed the work which was planned for 7 days within 3 days. And our superintendent was running to sequence the next scope of work because this was completely unexpected. So it happens a lot on site. And almost coming towards the end of project management part, there are certain software which we use daily. I wanted to show you some snippets or snapshots of these software, but it looks like we are way behind our time. So I'll just talk about these briefly, and then you can research or Google these names individually later on, and let me know if you have any questions. So the most common software used these days in project management is Procore. It gives the platform to manage all the documents, the plans, drawings, submittals, RFIs, ASI, budget, and everything. Uh, Next is Plan Grid. It also provides a similar facility. It depends on contractor if he wants to use it or not. I Square Fit is another great software used for bidding. This is when you send out the bid for a project to about 100 or 200 or maybe 300 subcontractors, and you need to reconcile them all. This software helps in that. Bluebeam Revu is a famous software used here for reviewing plans and mainly PDFs. It gives good tools to take measurements directly on the PDFs without going to CAD drawings. It gives you option to markups and whatnot. Next is Microsoft Project, and I'm pretty sure you all have either done projects on it, I mean scheduling on it, or studied it in your coursework. And last is BIM 360. This is used to create the 3D models of your drawing. We'll move to our next section of the webinar, the construction during COVID-19. Topics I'll be discussing are emerging dynamics, economy and market forces, impact on bidding process, site work and safety, and application of artificial intelligence. So the emerging dynamics, and I'll kind of be quick with these slides now so that we have enough time for our questionnaire. The emerging dynamics, first thing with the COVID-19 is that this pandemic, the situation is unforeseen and unprecedented. We have had Spanish flu in the past, but we were not as globalized or as mobilized as we are now. And the way it has spread around the world and is still spreading, is on the rise, is unprecedented. So how it's going to affect our construction industry is what I'm trying to discuss here. The global economy. So as we'll see in the later slides, the entire economy is on a slowdown all across the world, not only US or India. And since all our products are, if we are manufacturing something in India, the raw material might come from X industry, the expert labor might come out from a Y country, and it might be assembled in a Z country and finally delivered to India. This is how global economy works. And each construction project has several moving parts and are directly affected by shipping of raw materials, manpower, manufacturing, and whatnot. Supply chain. As I was discussing about the global economy, the supply chain is the same thing. Your shipping may be disrupted. Your procurement time, which were initially on an average 10 to 12 weeks, might shoot up to 20 weeks, which is actually happening here now. And it's kind of a chaos theory. Like the chaos theory says that a flutter of butterfly's wing in one part of the world might lead to tornado or cyclone in another part of the earth. And this is how the supply chain works. And you might not be able to predict how even a smallest or tiniest change in the supply chain is going to affect your construction project. Next is superpower frictions. We are all aware that US and China have been having kind of a trade war since last couple of months or maybe years. These lead to the countries or the policies to be that we are going to manufacture certain things within our own country or remove dependency from certain X country which we are not in good terms with anymore. These kind of things will also and most definitely are affecting the construction industry, at least in the US. Last is public opinion. So right now, everyone's in the panic mode. The share market is crashing, the stocks are low. So no one wants to build a new house right now. Everyone wants to save their cash. Everyone wants to see where the market goes, how the economy recovers, and wait it out instead of spending it. So these are the emerging dynamics during these pandemics. There are certain snippets I took out from a website on the University of Chicago. I would just highlight. I'm pretty sure you must have read it by now, but it's just I'll just focus on some of the main highlights here. Um, it's actually one of our leading Indian economists, Mr. Rajan. He says that during the Second World War, the economy was down and it was recovered by heavy taxation. But right now, people are not sure where it's going to fall, and that's going to be very damaging for investment and growth. So we do not know where we are headed right now. How many when we'll have a vaccine, when we'll have recovery from this. So this uncertainty, again, public opinion, this leads to again lack of new projects in construction industry. I'm sharing just two graphs here. This first one shows how different industries suffered from in the first quarter of 2020 as compared to the last quarter of 2019. Only two industries saw increase in demand, which were food and beverages, obviously, and government consumption. So government is buying PPE and giving fiscal support to the people, getting out packages, buying new stuff for doctors and whatnot. So all the other industries are currently seeing a downward trend. And in the second graph, I particularly want to focus on the construction industry. This graph shows how many jobs were lost in the April of 2020. So obviously the tourism was most affected, but our construction is not in a good place either. We have had about 975,000 job losses, and again, these are the graphs for US. This is a quick graph about the unemployment rate in India after this pandemic hit. So earlier we were seeing an average of about 7 to 8% of unemployment rate, which has shot up to 26.2% in April. And I'm pretty sure it must be still climbing. I was not able to find any latest data on this, but at least it gives us a sense of the unemployment leading to low money, low payrolls with the people, lack of salaries, and lack of salaries means they spend less, they impact the economy again in a cyclic mode, and then the investors or the people who are going to invest in new projects, new infrastructure pull back and wait it out. Yeah, the next graph, or this is a very interesting thing I found. Share of all imports of intermediate manufacturing products from China. So it kind of reflects how the countries are dependent on China for their economy. Again, it's a global economy. It's not very easy to, just cut the ties with a certain economy and say, hey, we are not going to have any trade with this country and so on and so forth. It all ties in, and as I talked earlier about the issues within the governments of different countries or the superpower friction we are going to have. So these will also decide how the industry is going to be affected in the future. This is a quick comparison which the economists have with the 2008 recession we have had, and just due to the time, we'll just focus on the quick highlights here. This could evolve into a recovery in if the economic activity is delayed. So maybe there's a typo there. The idea here is that if we are not quickly reactivating the economy across the world, then it could be uh, hit hard and will take a long time to recover. Again, there are certain businesses that operate on tight margins. This applies to construction business as well. The big companies, the mega projects have a big capital, but again, their margins are very, very tight. And in construction industry, the margins are always tight. It's never like other industries. I still remember a professor of mine at Iowa State University used to say that whenever there's a recession, you guys are going to lose your job first. We used to laugh on it, but now the joke's on us. And I have a lot of friends who have been laid off, and the infrastructure or the coming few months do not look good for the construction industry. Lastly, while the government is giving out packages to people, they cannot compensate for the physical interaction that the global economy is dependent upon. Our airlines have completely almost shut down. Tourism is low. Our food industry is getting affected, at least in the US. The meat plants are getting affected by the pandemic, and there have been severe outbreaks there. So before we move on, I have another quiz for you guys. Let's, if you go to your screen, you'll see the question is activated. The question is, which type of construction do you think should be categorized as essential? I'm sure the people, the 8% people who went for tourism are the ones who always wanted to go to Goa but never got a chance. Looks like we are locked out. So 48% people say medical facilities. That's correct. That makes sense, actually. Manufacturing, of course, we need new equipment. The PPEs, the transport system is under great load right now for transporting goods and services. Residential, well, you personally, I don't think that needs to be an essential category. And food processing, I was expecting a higher response here because obviously we need a little more investment, or we need to categorize food processing as an essential industry so that we have room for expansion in our in terms of construction. We are able to provide for the people getting affected. But this baffles me. If you are marking tourism as an essential industry, then you need to get to Goa when you get the first chance. Okay, coming back to the topic. Impact on bidding process. This is something we are seeing results right now. There's a lot of uncertainty in terms of bidding. The subcontractors who have extensive, even lifetime of experience of providing tangible numbers for bid, they could provide, they know off the top of their head that what the timeline is going to look like, what the cost is going to look like. They are completely confused right now. They don't know anything. The reason, I'll tell you why, is that the supply chain is affected. They are not sure if they are going to get the material on time. Labor, the biggest aspect, labor. uh, People may get infected. If you're infected, you are supposed to be quarantined for 14 days. Okay, let me clear this up. Here in US, we have not had shelter in place or lockdown like you guys had. for about 2 months. So that's the context I'm trying to provide when I'm talking about uncertainty. So they don't know if a labor will go to the site, the men will go to manpower will be on the site, and it might get infected. If it gets infected, they have to be in quarantine for 14 days. Right now, on all the sites, almost all the sites I know of, we are not allowing more than one trade. The conventional thing was, if you go to a certain floor of a project which is under construction, you will find about 6 or 8 different trades. When I say trades, uh, I would say the flooring guy, the painting guy, the structural guy, the welding guy, um, whatever it may be, the mechanical plumbing guy. Everyone's working at the same time in close quarters. Right now, it is not allowed. We are allowing only a single trade to be on site at a single time so that not everyone gets infected, and we avoid situations where people are clustered together in a small space. So when you have thinned out the manpower, when you have thinned out the when you reduce the manpower on site, what happens? Your time goes up, your time to completion goes up, and the project takes longer than it was completed. And if the project takes longer to be completed, it takes more money. You have to keep paying those people, you have to everything. It just disrupts everything. So there's an uncertainty during the bidding process. The new projects, people don't know what's going to happen. uh, the economy, obviously we have talked about this in detail in the previous slides. The safety, now they have to incorporate safety things. For example, we were already wearing hard hats and reflective jackets. Now they have to ensure everyone has a mask, everyone has a sanitizer, we have a washing station on the site, we have clean working environment, people are not working within 6 feet of each other, and those kind of things. Essential versus non-essential. Again, the reason I say this is that in US, in different states, we had different definition of essential and non-essential. If you would imagine, I've been going to the office for the last 2 months because my project is essential. All construction work is essential. We were not stopped. In New York, essential was defined in a different way because New York was hit in a very different manner. And in New York, most construction, unless it was a repair job or it was a project which was really crucially needed for this pandemic, for example, a hospital project and so on, or a bridge project or whatever, those were categorized as essential, and only those projects were allowed to continue. In my state, all construction was essential. In Texas, from what I know, everything was essential. But the cases are rising. We do not have a vaccine. We don't know, 2 months down the road, the government or the policies will change, and suddenly your project might become non-essential, and all your work is stopped indefinitely. You don't know when it's going to resume. You don't know when it's going to pick up back. So you don't even know when it's going to complete, right? So when you're unsure about these things, the bidding is where you provide a cost and a time, right? You're legally bounded to complete within that time and that money. As I was talking about the subcontract, now you do not know about it, so you might not bid, or you may overbid a project. And if all the subcontractors overbid a project, then the project cost just balloons up, it expands like anything, and it might not be viable for the owner at all. And last thing, procurement. I think I've addressed this in detail earlier. I was trying to get some data on the bidding process. All I know is this these words, but I was looking for some numbers to compare to that. And there was one place where I could find that this is a software used for the bidding process, Construct Connect. Um, we are done with our 1 hour, so I'll be quick here. Um, per their report, they are saying that they have the new bids are about 80% than the last year. Uh, the non-residential and commercial sectors have seen the biggest increases in bidding, but the private sectors are seeing a much lower increase in the number of projects. And also, they have found that more than compared to the last year, 10% projects more are abandoned, completely left out. These are not going to be bid at all. I'll skip this slide due to the time constraint. And last two slides I want to focus on is the site safety. We are all experts on how to protect ourselves from COVID-19 right now. Each of us has done entire research on this, so I'll just highlight the things here. Everyone has to be wearing PPE on the site, the masks. Each site now has to have a hand washing station. We have to have contact tracing on site. We have sign-in sheets and whatnot. Then we have additional training for the crew on the site to make sure they are aware what practices to follow. Do not cluster together. Always wear masks. Maintain safe distance. And lastly, I would like to address a new emerging sector in construction, which is the artificial intelligence. There are certain services that are coming up which help monitor continuous monitoring of the site to ensure there is social distancing. There are cameras installed. They have algorithms which see if the workers are staying more than 6 feet apart. If not, they play an alarm or inform the superintendent on the site and sends out a photo that these people are clustered together. PPE compliance, we already have this on our site. If you go, so earlier it was programmed as if you go to the site without a hard hat, a reflective jacket, uh, there will be an alarm and you won't, it will be an alert that you are entering the site without proper protective equipment. Right now, it is using to track that people are wearing masks. Then you have exclusion zones. Um, the the way the AI works in this part is that it determines or predicts where people might be clustered together, or where the next place where the particular trade is going to work on, and it might create an exclusion zone and alert other trades not to go there because there are already a lot of people in a dense area, in a small area, making it dense. And it works with predictive technology. Again, I figured I would talk to you. I would go to these websites and talk to you about, walk you through what features these have. But I believe these slides will be distributed to you, and you'll be able to go to these sites and look around and see what the new technology is doing in terms of construction industry. Well, I had a video here, but we are above our 1 hour, so I'll move to our last slide. Thank you all for bearing with me and listening to me for more than 1 hour. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn, on my email, or maybe WhatsApp. I'll hand over now to Mr. Alok if he wants to have it open for Q&A.
Thank you, Jasmeet sir, for this session. I hope everyone is benefited with today's interaction, especially students. Now let's take some questions from participants. Participants can ask in chat box in Zoom. They can type their question on the chat box.
Hello. Hello, Alok sir. There is one question in chat box.
Yes, sir. Jasmeet sir, can you see it? Jasmeet sir?
Let me open up the, okay. Which is best, I'm not sure. A brief info about the non-conformance report. Can you elaborate this, please? Company's workflow in terms of how we are set up to work? I believe so. We are CMA on this job. a leading contractor called Ryan Companies is working as a contractor on this. Our role in this is to provide technical expertise. Our team monitors what the design process is looking like. We pitch in whenever there's something going wrong, or we have certain ideas and it could be improved in a certain way. Other than that, we report directly to the owner. The subcontractors and the contractor are not, the general contractor is not under any contractual obligation under us. And yeah, we provide weekly updates to the owner and just make sure that we are following all the requirements of a courthouse. There are several moving parts, there are security concerns, there are certain regulations that need to be met since this is a federal project. There are a lot of moving parts here and we have to ensure that it's all going good. Yeah, we work on BIM a lot. BIM is a major aspect to address any clashes and find out if there are going to be any clashes upcoming. Actually, we found one last week, I believe, and we sent an RFI to change the location of underground piping. While quoting upcoming bid, how much percentages of extra overhead? It completely depends on your, responding to the question of Mr. Kishan. So it completely depends on your, on what kind of services you are providing. For example, let's talk about doors. So we were already facing issues with our doors. It was completely, what would be the right word? It was completely in a bad shape. And right now, a lot of our doors came from Mexico, from China. So if they are coming from China, we are not sure about it. Right now in our project, we have elevators, and our elevator company, which we have hired, is from New York. So they are not able to start manufacturing at all in the coming couple of weeks. What is the most important thing we should consider during bidding a project, Mr. Prateek? So I believe you're talking from a subcontractor's perspective. So I would say attention to detail, reviewing your plans and spec books thoroughly. That could be the best thing you could do. Legal protection in terms of COVID-19. I'm not sure about open source. The AI softwares, you'll have to do some research. We simply use them when required, but I'm sure these are not open source. In terms of project completion, okay, you are asking about the legal protection. So there are certain things which the contractor or subcontractor can claim, which were out of their hand, and which could not have been avoided at all, and these were overruled by certain policies from the government. So in that case, I believe the insurance company comes into picture. They will help that subcontractor or contractor. How do you prepare your mindset during COVID-19? I would say just practice all the measures you need to practice. Wear your mask, and be sensible about it. Make sure if you have crew on site, make sure they do not get infected, because once they do, your entire site has to be shut down for a certain number of days. In where I'm working, it's about 3 days, and the entire crew that was present or contact with that person have to be in quarantine for 14 days. So it's best to practice social distancing. Scope of construction in US after COVID-19. You better wait it out for a year or two. Will there be job opportunities for upcoming as the present global? Well, that's the point. If we are able to recover quickly, then yes. If not, then we don't know. Softwares we are using are Procore mainly. We use BIM 360. We use Bluebeam, and I mean, in terms of project management, these are the only softwares we are using. Overall, thank you, Kishan. How can we get international construction projects for what in India? Yadugani, if you, sorry if I pronounce your name wrong, if you can repeat your question more clearly. BIM 360, BIM. Well, Prayas Jain, you need to revise your entire schedule. Sit down with the superintendent, sit down with the subcontractor. Obviously, you cannot sit down, you have a conference these days. And then just discuss what's our plan going to be moving forward, and you need to revise your schedule. That's the best thing you can do. I was just informed that we need to have our last question. Problems facing by construction managers during construction. Okay, so question is, what are the problems facing by construction project managers during construction? It's mostly about making sure that the coordination is going well between certain trades, between the subcontractors. The sequencing of the jobs has completely changed. We have to, as I said, we have to revise and update our schedule very frequently. We have to see, we have to, you know, get an idea if anyone's getting infected, has reported positive, then we have to take necessary steps and just prepare for it. I think this was our last question, Mr. Alok.
Okay, thank you, sir. And for vote of thanks, I would like to invite Dr. Ramakant Agrawal, head of the department. Dr. Ramakant Agrawal, sir.
Very good morning to all of you. I, Dr. Ramakant Agrawal, welcome you all to this closing session of this wonderful webinar on construction plan. The construction industry and how we have to move after post-COVID environment. So I am greatly thankful to Mr. Jasmeet Singh for his wonderful lecture. He is not only a quality manager, but also a teacher and motivator. I am thanks to Jasmeet Singh once again. You all have heard this expertise today's lecture. A strong backing is always needed for the successful completion of such tasks, and we have a wonderful leader as Professor Dr. Sunil K. Somani, the Vice Chancellor of the Medi-Caps University. Sir, we are extremely grateful to you for your kind support and motivation. I also thankful to Dr. D.K. Panda, Dean Engineering, for his kind support. Dr. Pradyum Yadav, the Registrar Medi-Caps University, leading the supporting team successfully, and he has provided all necessary arrangement for this webinar. I am thankful to him. I also thank Mr. Surkan Soni, Mr. Prasant Panse, Mr. Amrita Mantri, Mr. Sasank Agrawal, and Mr. Gajen Singh, the whole wake-up support team for this webinar, and especially all the participants from all over the globe for their patient listening. Hope we all keep gathering together for better causes. Thank you all. Have a great day ahead. Thanks to all.
And
I
so
would
in
like
the
to
end,
thank Medi-Caps.
yes, sir.
I would like to thank you guys to provide this opportunity for the students and